For more on museums and the pandemic, let's bring in Andrew Saluti. He's Assistant Professor and Program Director of the Graduate Program in Museum Studies at Syracuse University. Welcome back to the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
So the theme for 2021's International Museum Day is the future of museums, recover and reimagine. So as museums globally get back to business, what does a typical visit look like now?
Well, as you just heard, it's going to be a lot different. Capacity is going to be low, and they'll gradually, based on the information in each area, in each region, they'll gradually start to elevate and start to try to get back up to larger normal numbers. But there's going to be a lot of time ticketing. You're going to want to be able to plan your visit well in advance. It's very rare, I think, that you're going to be able to walk in off the street especially for the major institutions that are reopening. And the reason why they're doing this is so that they can, not only make sure that the space is safe and the environment is controlled, but also so they have time for cleaning and for prepping for the next round of people to come in.
So then what have we seen in terms of the revenue lost during the pandemic, not just from a lack of visitor spending, but also as venues for special events?
Well, that's just it. So visitor ticket sales really only make up a fraction of any museum's operating budget. A major loss in revenue is going to be from the gala events, from the fundraisers, from all of the supplemental programming that the museum uses to fundraise so that they can be doing other kinds of programs as well. It's really hit the majority of the institutions very hard in the United States and abroad.
So then how does the Smithsonian funding model compare to, say, other international institutions and private museums?
Well, the Smithsonian is unique in the United States in that it more closely connects to how museums are funded in Europe and across the world. In most of the world, museums are actually heavily subsidized or supported by their governments, by the state, by social programs. In the United States, the majority of museums are actually private nonprofits, and they rely on a basket of different kinds of funding to be able to keep their doors open. This includes endowments, fundraising, some ticket sales, and then sales from gift shops and restaurants. The Smithsonian is actually heavily subsidized by the United States federal government, but it is still not untouched by the COVID impact because of the massive machine of programming that the Smithsonian offers in terms of its publications and its special programming and its restaurants and other draws for tourism. The Smithsonian has certainly also taken the hit, same as every museum in the United States.
And speaking of some of these supplemental offerings, we know that it's hard to substitute the in-person experience of the museum space. How have museums managed to keep engagement up, as well as sort of really keeping people interested, things like virtual tours, membership drives?
Well, Rachelle, you use the word that I like to use often in the classroom, and that's engagement. Is trying to make sure that the museum is staying relevant to the community that they are meant to serve, that they are trying to that they're trying to represent. So museums have gotten very creative. A lot of digital programming, a lot of virtual interaction and experience. But one of the things that you have to remember is that not everybody has equal access to the same kind of robust online programming that others have. So museums have been very creative with doing programming that is kind of outside of the gallery walls and open air spaces, bringing interaction to spaces that are environmentally safe. And I think you're going to see a lot of this remain well after COVID well, I think COVID's always going to be here, but it remains after COVID is more under control. These digital tools and technologies that a lot of museums have relied on to engage with their public, that's just going to be one part of the toolkit that most museums are now going to use moving on in the future.
And speaking of strategizing, we know that some museums like the Louvre use these closures to make renovations, plan or reschedule exhibitions that were set to show before the pandemic disrupted the calendar. How will all of this be managed going forward?
That's a great question. There were a lot of question marks, especially this past summer, not knowing, and that's the biggest challenge for museums, not knowing exactly how to plan when planning seems like it's kind of secondary to controlling this virus. So I think a lot of exhibitions are going to be pushed out for many years to come. Renovations, I think, are starting to happen again, but the cost of materials now, and this is beyond the museum, beyond the nonprofit sector, cost of materials is also slowing down some projects quite a bit. So it is going to be a slow rollout especially for museums to get back to that pre-2020 phase of not only programming but also capital projects.